Some of our most challenging client projects were actually not those that were struggling with money when it comes to scaling their business. And yet they still brought us in to help them scale. I wonder why that is. Hey, it's Wei, and you're listening to the Limitless Leader Podcast, the podcast for powerfully ambitious entrepreneurs and leaders wanting to have limitless freedom to vision and focus on purposeful impact and growth. And in this episode, we are going to be addressing this misnomer, this myth that when a business is growing and it achieves high revenues, that it must be a healthy business. Now, I'm not saying that revenues aren't important. In fact, it's kind of a lifeblood of the business. But when it comes to scaling in a healthy and sustainable way, calibrating on just revenues alone is going to eventually set you up for some challenges down the road. Like I was saying, we have some of our most challenging projects in the past with clients were not with clients who were struggling to, grow their revenues. They were actually achieving high revenues, but they were struggling with healthy scaling. And let's talk about what that healthy scaling looks like. Healthy scaling, if you look at what we call the easy three, we look at acquisitions, we look at fulfillment, we look at operations as the three main components of every organization. And in order for healthy growth to happen, all three pillars of the easy three need to be pretty close together. In other words, if your acquisitions is outgrowing your structure for your fulfillment and your operations, while it may look really sexy because if you have higher acquisition structure or you're growing that aspect of your business, that means you're achieving high revenues. But those high revenues, if fulfillment and operations can't keep up, we've actually seen it destroy entire organizations and completely broken it. Think about what happens when you have a lot of sales that come in, but the customers and clients aren't being taken care of. Okay, not only are you running the risk of dealing with, or you are dealing with returns and refunds and chargebacks, okay, depending on what kind of business model that you're running. But when it comes to, it's kind of like that commercial that they used to have years ago where they're showing this startup and they launched their website and it was launch day. And I think it was a commercial for UPS or some kind of fulfillment company. And then they say, yay, they got a sale, right? They saw these indicators like a ticker tape, right? And then boom, another sale came in. They got really excited and all of a sudden ding, 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 and all of a sudden it just like completely took off and they weren't celebrating anymore. Why? Because they were now freaking out. How are we going to handle this? And it was a great commercial because then UPS steps and says, we can take care of this for you. Or is it FedEx? Or anyway, this is one of those companies. Same concept here. Okay. So when you look at a company, and this is where I get a little frustrated with social media and some of the business gurus or business consultants, not all of them, not all the business programs. I'm just like saying a few of them. Okay. And if I'm not going to name any names, but if you hear this and you know that you're one of them, you know who you are. They focus mostly on high revenues. Okay. And that's the attractive piece. It's sexier, right? 10K months, 25K months, 100K months, right? I mean, in fact, it's those pieces that are so popular. That's why advertising platforms will reject certain types of advertising because they're promising these high revenues. But high revenues alone, if you don't have everything else going on for you in a healthy way, it's a double-edged sword. You can literally destroy your business. It's an insidious trap. Okay. And this is particularly challenging for those entrepreneurs that are service-based entrepreneurs or course creation, where you have low overhead and the main thing that you're good at is sales. So those entrepreneurs that are good at sales, this is something you really want to pay attention to. It is an insidious trap to focus on just revenues alone when it comes to scaling your business, because you get into this habit of using money to solve all your problems when some of the things money can't solve, such as the structure of the business. Okay. Those that are good at sales and good at bootstrapping and doing what it takes to make revenue, who cares if it breaks the ecosystem? I'll just go make more. Yeah, that's the trap. And so many times we have had to come in and fix that literally fix that piece, that component, that approach to the business. And it's more than just a structure. We end up doing mindset work, mental emotional work, and there's all kinds of deeper things that are the culprits of why that happens. And it's not just entrepreneurs. The Fortune 500 companies that we've worked with, they experience the same thing. They focus primarily on the revenues or the bottom line. And the chaos behind the Fortune 500 companies who struggle with unhealthy scaling is a bit of a nightmare. You think you have it hard as an entrepreneur. Wait till you hear about some of the things that we've seen. What'll happen is, because they're generating millions and millions of dollars, it's painful to see how much of it is wasted by throwing it at a problem that never gets solved. And so what they do is it's like a vicious trap. Then they focus more on revenues, and they put the pressure on the acquisitions side of the business to generate more revenue so they can continue to feed this cancer that is the real problem why their profit margins are so low. I'm reminded of a lot of stories of these, and I love seeing the transformation and evolution of some of these business coaches and consultants and gurus out there who share very vulnerably what they've gone through, where they've, make less from a gross standpoint right now, but profit a lot more. I still remember a story. I forgot who it was specifically, but if you're hearing this, you might know who it is. If so, just remind me later. What they were doing, they announced that they were making like 20 million a year, 30 million a year. And the reason why they were sharing that, because at the time they were sharing that story, they were only making 2 million a year at the time, or 3 million a year at the time. But their profit margins were triple compared to when they were making 20 to 30 million a year. You have to think about that. Okay, let me repeat that again. They were sharing this story because when they were making 20 to 30 million a year, they were making less profit in their business than when they were currently, at the time they're sharing the story, making 2 to 3 million a year. In fact, they shared the numbers. It was triple the profit than when they were generating 20 to 30 million in revenues. Okay. Now, what we've found, why we love with entrepreneurs, is because it's easier to get to the root cause. You can imagine if you're working with a Fortune 500 company and you're trying to get the root cause of why that's happening, you might as well, it's like trying to lift an elephant to find something underneath that is not, anyway, that's a weird metaphor. But the point is that for entrepreneurs, we love this because we can get to the bottom of it really quick. For example, we had an entrepreneur that was so good at making revenue. They just go out. It's almost like they had this Midas touch. Everywhere they went, boom, they were able to generate revenue. But what was causing the unhealthy scaling of the business, okay, and what I mean by unhealthy, this particular client would have amazing days, but then the business would crash, and then he would go make more money, and the business would crash. And what I mean by crash is not just revenue crash or profits crash, but he would change offerings and programs because they no longer worked, because he would basically ruin his reputation around a specific niche. Then he would jump to another niche. Not only that, his teams that he had it was like a revolving door. Before we started working with him, every time we connected with him, he had a whole new set of names to describe his team. So when we started working with him, it was interesting because we realized that his expertise was making money. His expertise was being able to convince people, to sway people, to influence people. But what it was covering up for was excessive partying, transient relationships in his life, drugs and alcohol. And so how we create a healthier scaling dynamic, we worked with him as a leader. And sometimes that's what it takes. It's not about the business. It's about the leader of the business. And that's why our organization is called Limitless Leader, because we always start with the leader. We have to get that out of the way. We start with the leader, make sure that they are ready to scale in a way that is sustainable. And then we establish the foundation and we build the structure of the business around the unique leadership style of that leader that is operating in an optimal way. A lot of times we get brought in and say, okay, I need you to fix this in my business. I need you to fix it because for some reason it's just not working. And Almost every single time when we have that kind of an insistence of, here, I'll give you a bunch of money, just go fix this. I don't want to deal with it. Well, we now know that the first thing we address is, okay, well, let's talk about where you are. It's like, no, I'm fine. And that's another flag. Every single time we have that type of dynamic, guess where it goes to? The high revenues are there, but the leader, him or herself, is not running an optimal, healthy model. Okay. So there's another example that where high revenues does not necessarily mean healthy business scaling. And this one's really sneaky because a lot of times we'll look at the annual revenues or quarterly revenues, right? And we say, hey, it looks pretty good. It looks like everything is great and moving up. So what's the problem, right? Why are we having problems with, retention of our team members? Why are we having problems with high levels of stress at the workplace? How are we having problems with, fulfilling our customers properly? Sometimes the clues are when we get a little bit more myopic instead of these large sweeps of quarterly and annual results, because there are some businesses and entrepreneurs that are really good at just clutch performance, just last minute pulling it out. We've hit those numbers. We see it all the time. We even see it in places like Tesla, right? They were struggling with numbers, and at the last minute they pulled those numbers out. Okay, that is not healthy. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. So what we do is to get myopic. We go to the monthly, we go to the weekly, and we look for the roller coaster ups and downs of the business. That's where we get the clues on how healthy it actually is. The healthier a business is while they're scaling, the smoother that curve is, no matter how myopic or how broad you look at the statistics and the numbers. And when it's too many highs and lows, and this is why we have a strategy called gap spackling, okay, where we spackle the gaps depending on where it is. And it applies in acquisitions, applies in fulfillment, applies in operations everywhere. And it even applies in how you pivot and adapt to changing market conditions. There is a gap spackle solution for all of that. Should probably make an app for that or an AI for that. Gap spackle. But it's very stressful and it's not fun. 1 month up, 1 month down, 1 week up, 1 week down. It could even be down. It's like the whole feast or famine thing. And that is actually a reflection of the human beings that are in the leadership team. And what happens is how they approach, growing a business, running a business, leading their teams is then reflected into that. And that's why we found the super, shortcut hack to fixing all of our clients' problems goes back down to the root cause of what makes a strategy successful, be it a scaling strategy, a sales strategy, an operation strategy. It's the human being. And our patented technology is around that. Now, that's what has been facilitating the efficacy of all of our scaling strategies. Our Easy 3 strategy or our Y stack strategy or our, scaling stress test strategies that will help eliminate the wasting of time, energy, and stress and anxiety around scaling into an unknown. Okay, it's quantifying all those different things. But all that is facilitated by being able to truly understand the human beings behind it all. Okay. So hopefully, you found this to be helpful, sharing some of the experiences we've had, demonstrating that high revenues, don't be lured into that just because, the key to healthy scaling is just to make a bunch of revenue. There's so much more. Revenues is simply one metric out of all the metrics that are responsible to help you determine what healthy business scaling is, right? There's a time metric. Okay. And there's the Y stack that produces quantifiable Ys of why you want to scale. I mean, what I mean by quantifiable Ys, it's literally the why behind why you want to scale that can be quantified into a metric, a KPI that you can put right next to revenues and operational KPIs. Okay. So Hope you enjoyed this episode. And if there was something we talked about or I talked about that you want to dive deeper into, seeing how it can shift things in your world as a limitless leader or in your scaling efforts, just go to limitlessleader.co or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn to connect with us. Or you can email us at team@limitlessleader.co or message us on the social media platforms. All the links are below in the description. Just make sure to mention, if you reach out to us, and make sure to mention the particular episode that inspired you so that we can support you in the best way possible when providing a lot of the free resources we have that'll help you experience what it is that we do to help entrepreneurs scale up and out of the daily grind without sacrificing revenue and growth. So until next time, keep striving onward and upwards for the limitless possibilities that lie within you.